The crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across the reception hall, and Dane Carter kept his breathing steady as he moved through the crowd of Velhari diplomats. Their iridescent skin shimmered under the ornate lighting, elegant and alien. He wore the credentials of a human trade delegate, but the data chip hidden in his collar told a different story. 3 days of careful work, and he'd finally mapped the orbital defense grid. 1 more hour and he could leave this world. Then she appeared beside him. Queen Sirae was taller than most Velhari, her ceremonial robes flowing like liquid mercury. She moved with the kind of grace that made everyone else seem clumsy. Dane had studied her profile for weeks, memorized every public appearance, every recorded speech, but nothing prepared him for the moment. She leaned close, her breath cool against his ear, and whispered 5 words that turned his blood to ice. "I know what you're doing." Dane's hand instinctively moved toward the concealed weapon at his hip, but her fingers caught his wrist with surprising strength. Her silver eyes held his, and there was no anger in them, only calculation. "Walk with me," she said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute command. Now. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to fight, to trigger the emergency extraction, but 24 Velhari guards lined the walls, their weapons barely concealed beneath formal wrappings. He was trapped, and she knew it. She led him through a side corridor away from the crowd. The sounds of the reception faded behind ornate doors that sealed with a pneumatic hiss. They were alone in a private chamber overlooking the capital city, its towers stretching toward 3 moons that hung low in the violet sky. "You're very good," Sirae said, circling him slowly. "The credentials are flawless. Your Velhari is nearly perfect. You even replicate our mannerisms." She paused. "But you watch the guard rotations too carefully. And you asked about the orbital platforms twice." Dane said nothing. His mind raced through options, each one ending badly. "I'm not going to kill you," she continued, and something in her tone made him look up sharply. "I'm going to offer you a choice." "Why would you do that?" "Because we have a common enemy." She moved to the window, her silhouette framed against the city lights. "There are factions within my court who want war with humanity. They believe your species is weak, unworthy of the territories you hold. They're wrong, but they're also powerful. And you want me to believe you're different? I want you to believe that I'm pragmatic." She turned to face him. General Kovar and his allies have been moving weapons into position for months. Stealth platforms, orbital strikes, planet crackers. They plan to hit your colonies before your fleet can respond. It would be devastation on a scale neither of our species has seen. Dane felt his stomach drop. "You're lying. Am I?" She activated a holographic display, and star charts bloomed in the air between them. Red markers clustered around human territories, each one representing a weapons platform. "These went active 2 days ago. Your intelligence hasn't detected them yet. They won't. Until it's too late." He stared at the display, counting the markers. 50, maybe more. Enough to glass a dozen worlds. "Why tell me this?" "Because I need proof that will hold up before the Council of Matriarchs." Kovar has been careful. He's covered his tracks, buried the evidence. But you're a spy, Dane Carter. You're very good at finding things people want hidden. She deactivated the display. "Help me expose him, and I'll give you everything you need to warn your people." "This could be a trap." "It could be." Her expression didn't change. "But in 3 days, those platforms will be fully operational, and if I wanted you dead, you'd already be floating in the void." Dane looked at her, trying to read the alien features, searching for deception. He found only cold determination. "What do you get out of this?" "Peace," she said simply, "and the survival of my people. A war with humanity would cost us everything, even if we won." Kovar doesn't care. He wants glory, conquest, a return to the old ways. "I want a future." Dane made his decision. It might be the last one he ever made. "What do you need me to do?" Over the next 30 hours, Dane moved through the Velhari capital like a ghost. Sirae had given him access codes, maps, the locations of server nodes buried deep in military installations. He worked in stolen moments, downloading encrypted files, while Velhari soldiers passed within meters of his position. The data was worse than she'd described. The weapons platforms weren't just positioned near human space. They were already targeting specific cities, specific populations. The attack plan was surgical, designed to decapitate human leadership in the first strike. He transmitted the data in compressed bursts to a relay satellite, praying Earth intelligence was monitoring the right frequencies. But transmission wasn't enough. He needed physical evidence, something undeniable. Sirae arranged a meeting in the subterranean archives, a maze of data storage that stretched kilometers beneath the palace. She met him in the shadows, her royal robes replaced with tactical gear. "The original deployment orders are here," she said, leading him through corridors lined with crystalline memory cores. "Kovar's personal authorization, signed and sealed. How did you know about this place? I'm the Queen. There's very little I don't know." She paused at a junction, checking a handheld scanner, but knowing and proving are different things. Kovar has allies in the Guard. If they find us here, we're both dead. They reached a sealed vault, and Sirae placed her hand against the biometric lock. It flashed red. "That's impossible," she breathed. "My access should override everything. Someone changed the protocols." Dane pulled out a decryption tool, a piece of human tech that looked primitive, next to Velhari engineering. "Give me 2 minutes." "We don't have 2 minutes." Sirae's scanner lit up with proximity alerts. "They're coming." Dane worked faster, his fingers flying across the tool's interface. The vault lock flickered, wavered, and finally turned green. The door unsealed with a hiss. Inside, holographic files hung in the air like frozen stars. Dane grabbed what he could, copying data onto a portable drive while footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. "We need to move," Sirae said, her weapon drawn. They ran. The archives became a labyrinth of twisting passages. As alarms shrieked overhead, Velhari guards poured in from multiple directions, their armor gleaming under emergency lighting. Sirae fired precise shots, dropping 2 guards before they could raise their weapons. Dane followed her lead, trusting her knowledge of the facility. They burst into a transit station, and Sirae slammed the controls, sealing the entrance behind them. A transport pod waited on magnetic rails, and they threw themselves inside as plasma fire scorched the doorway. "Where does this go?" Dane asked. "The surface. But they'll be waiting." She checked her weapons charge. "Kovar knows. He must know." The pod accelerated through transparent tubes, and Dane caught glimpses of the city above. Beautiful and deadly. He checked his own weapon, made sure the data drive was secure. "There's another problem," Sirae said quietly. "My sister, she commands the palace guard. Let me guess. She's working with Kovar. She is Kovar's plan. But she's the one who convinced the generals that humanity was weak. She's been feeding them intelligence, manipulating reports." Sirae's voice was hollow. I didn't want to believe it. "But the access codes, the timing, it has to be her." The pod slowed as it approached the surface terminal. Through the transparent walls, Dane could see armed soldiers forming a perimeter. "We're not getting through that," he said. "No, we're not." Sirae looked at him, and for the first time he saw fear in her eyes. "But you might." "There's a maintenance shaft 2 levels down. It leads to the spaceport. I can hold them here long enough for you to reach your ship." "That's suicide. That's duty." She placed something in his hand. A small data crystal, warm from her touch. "My testimony. Everything I know about the conspiracy sealed with royal authentication. Broadcast it and the council will have to act. The war can be stopped. Come with me. I can't abandon my people." "Not like this," she smiled, and it was terribly sad. "Besides, Ashara won't kill me. I'm her sister. She'll arrest me, put me on trial, discredit everything I've done. But you'll be gone by then. You'll have the proof." The pod doors opened. Soldiers raised their weapons. Dane grabbed Sirae's arm. "There has to be another way." "There isn't. And you know it." She pulled free, her weapon charging. "Go. Make this mean something." She stepped out of the pod and the world exploded into violence. Dane forced himself to move, dropping through the maintenance hatch as plasma fire lit up the terminal above. He heard Sirae's voice, commanding and clear, shouting orders in Velhari, then screams, then silence. He ran through the maintenance shaft, emerging in a cargo bay near the spaceport. His ship was where he'd left it, disguised as a commercial transport. He bypassed security with codes Sirae had provided, his hands shaking as he entered the cockpit. The engines were warming up when he heard the explosion. On the monitor, he could see the palace. Smoke rose from the terminal where he'd left Sirae. And then, through the chaos, he saw her being carried out on a stretcher. Blood stained her robes, but she was moving, still alive. Another figure stood over her, taller, wearing commander's insignia. The family resemblance was unmistakable. Ishara. Dane's finger hovered over the launch controls. He could go back. He could try to save her. But the data drive in his pocket contained the locations of 50 weapons platforms. 50 targeted strikes that would kill billions. He made his choice. The ship lifted off as the spaceport defenses came online. Velhari fighters scrambled to intercept, their sleek forms cutting through the atmosphere. Dane pushed the engines to maximum, the hull groaning under the acceleration. Plasma fire streaked past his cockpit. He rolled the ship, diving toward the planetary rings to lose his pursuers in the debris field. Fragments of ice and rock hammered against his shields as he wove between larger chunks, the Velhari fighters staying close. One broke off, circling to cut him off. Dane didn't hesitate. He targeted the fighter with his ship's limited weapons and fired. The Velhari pilot tried to evade, but the shot caught their engine. The fighter spiraled into a massive ice boulder and disintegrated. 2 more fighters pressed the attack. Dane's shields were failing, warning lights flashing across every console. He cleared the rings and made for open space, but the Velhari ships were faster. Then his communications array lit up. A transmission, tightly encrypted, using human military codes. Unidentified vessel. This is Captain Lisa Monroe, of the UES Defender. We're detecting weapons lock on your position. Need assistance? Dane almost laughed. Defender, this is Operative Carter. Authorization code 77 Alpha. I've got critical intelligence in hostile pursuit. I could use a hand. Copy that, Carter. Hang tight. The Defender dropped out of faster-than-light travel 300 kilometers ahead, its weapons already hot. The human destroyer was smaller than Velhari capital ships, but it was built for exactly this kind of fight. Railgun rounds streaked across the void, forcing the Velhari fighters to scatter. "Get to our hangar," Monroe ordered. "We'll cover you." Dane guided his damaged ship toward the Defender as the destroyer's point defense systems lit up the darkness. One Velhari fighter tried to follow him in, but a railgun burst tore through its cockpit. The other retreated, disappearing back toward the planet. The moment Dane's ship touched down in the hangar, Marines surrounded him with weapons drawn. He raised his hands, holding up the data drive. "I need to speak to Admiral Hayes. Right now. We've got maybe 48 hours before the Velhari launch a first strike." They rushed him to the bridge, and he uploaded everything. The weapons platforms, the deployment orders, Sirae's testimony. Admiral Patricia Hayes watched the data scroll across her screens, her expression growing darker with each file. "This is verified?" she asked. "By the Velhari Queen herself. She gave her life to get this to us." Hayes turned to her tactical officer. "Sound General alert. I want every ship we have moving to intercept coordinates. Send this data to Fleet Command with priority alpha encryption." She looked at Dane. "If you're wrong about this, Operative, we're about to start a war. If I'm right, we're about to prevent one. The next hours were chaos. Human fleets mobilized across 3 sectors, hunting for weapons platforms that shouldn't exist. Intelligence confirmed Dane's data, detecting energy signatures that matched the predicted locations. The platforms were there. All of them. And then they went active. The first platform fired on a mining colony in the Pershing system. The shot was intercepted by a human destroyer that had positioned itself based on Dane's intelligence, but the destroyer was destroyed in the process. 73 crew members died buying time for the colonists to evacuate. Across human space, the battle began. Dane watched from the Defender's bridge as Admiral Hayes coordinated the response. Human ships engaged the platforms in desperate combat, taking heavy casualties but destroying target after target. The Velhari had designed the platforms to be devastating in a surprise attack, but without that element of surprise, they were vulnerable. Platform 17 destroyed, Tactical reported. Platform 18 is powering up. UES Churchill is moving to intercept. Platform 9 is fired on the Arcturus station. Point defense is holding, but they've taken damage. Hayes maintained perfect composure, directing ships like pieces on a chessboard. All vessels, focus fire. Don't let them establish a perimeter. We end this now. Dane felt useless, standing on the bridge while others fought and died. But then Hayes turned to him. Carter, I'm authorizing a wideband transmission. Use the Queen's testimony. Let's make sure everyone knows what really happened here. Dane accessed the communications array and loaded Sirae's final recording. Her image appeared on screens across human and Velhari space simultaneously. She looked exhausted, blood staining her robes, but her voice was clear and strong. I am Queen Sirae of the Velhari Ascendancy. What you are witnessing is an act of treason against both our peoples. General Kovar and his allies have deployed weapons platforms without council authorization, intending to provoke a war that serves only their ambition. I have provided evidence of their crimes to the human operative Dane Carter, and I call upon the Council of Matriarchs to immediately cease all hostilities and bring these traitors to justice. This war is a lie. Do not let it become our future. The transmission ended. For a moment, nothing changed. The battle continued. Platforms firing, ships exploding. Then the Velhari fleet arrived. Not the military vessels Dane expected, but a diplomatic convoy flying council colors. They broadcast their own message, and this time it was Ishara who appeared on screen. Her expression was ice. All Velhari forces, this is Commander Ishara. By order of the Council of Matriarchs, you are to power down immediately and surrender to council authority. General Kovar has been arrested for treason. This conflict is over. One by one, the remaining platforms went dark. Velhari ships that had been moving to reinforce them instead changed course, heading back to their homeworld. The bridge of the Defender was silent, except for the soft beeping of monitors. All platforms neutralized or surrendered. Tactical reported. Casualty reports coming in. We lost 8 ships. Estimated 400 personnel. Hayes closed her eyes briefly. Get me a secure line to Council Command. We have a lot to discuss. Dane slumped against a console, exhaustion finally catching up to him. They'd won. Billions of lives saved. But the faces of those 400 crew members would join Sirae's in his dreams. A private message appeared on his terminal, encrypted. Using Velhari protocols he recognized, he decoded it carefully. The message was from Sirae. If you're reading this, then I'm either dead or imprisoned. Either way, know that I don't regret my choice. You gave me hope that our species could be better than our worst instincts. The cost of peace is often paid by those who believe in it most. Don't let that stop you from believing. And Carter, when this is over, when the historians record what happened, make sure they know the truth. Not all Velhari wanted war. Some of us wanted tomorrow. Tell them that. The message ended with coordinates. A memorial garden on the Velhari homeworld, dedicated to those who died preventing wars, rather than fighting them. Sirae had arranged for her name to be added, along with one other, Dane Carter. Human operative. Believer in tomorrow. He stared at the screen for a long time, then forwarded the message to Admiral Hayes, with a simple note. For the record. 3 weeks later, Dane stood in that memorial garden. The Velhari Council had allowed him to visit as part of the formal peace negotiations. Ishara met him there, her expression unreadable. She survived, Ishara said without preamble. My sister, barely. She's in recovery, under guard. The Council hasn't decided if she's a hero or a traitor. She's both, Dane said. Just like me, perhaps. Ishara looked at the memorial stones, thousands of names carved in crystalline surfaces. She asked me to give you something. She handed him a small object. A royal seal, the kind Velhari queens used to authenticate the most important documents. She said you'd know what it means. Dane turned it over in his hands. Trust. Alliance. The beginning of something new, built on the sacrifice of those willing to pay the price. Tell her I'll keep it safe. Tell her yourself. Ishara's expression softened slightly. The council is allowing visitors. Carefully vetted, of course. But she specifically requested you. Dane looked up at the alien sky, 3 moons rising over the city where he'd almost died, where Sirae had chosen peace over safety, truth over tradition. I'd like that, he said. Humanity had survived. Not through superior firepower or technological advantage, but because one person had whispered a secret, and another had chosen to listen. Because sometimes the bravest thing you could do was trust your enemy to be better than their worst impulses. The garden was quiet except for the wind moving through crystalline chimes, each one bearing a name, a story, a choice that mattered. Dane added his own silent prayer to the chorus, a promise to the future Sirae had helped him save. Tomorrow would come, for all of them, and it would be worth the cost.